Assalamu Alaikum and welcome back to our channel. We're delighted to have you join us for today's video. Dear viewers, in today's story, you're about to witness the incredible journey of a struggling young delivery driver who sacrificed his last meal for a hungry girl on the street, completely unaware that she was the daughter of one of the wealthiest men in the country. What happens next will leave you speechless and touch your heart deeply. This story teaches us about the power of kindness and how the universe works in mysterious ways to reward those with pure intentions. Please watch this video until the very end, because the conclusion will surely leave you amazed. In the bustling metropolis of Westshore City, where gleaming skyscrapers touch the clouds and luxury cars zoomed down wide avenues, lived a young man named Rayhan. At just 24 years of age, Rayhan worked tirelessly as a food delivery driver, zipping through congested streets on his weathered motorcycle that had seen better days. The scratched blue paint and occasional sputtering engine told the story of years of faithful service, much like Rayhan himself. Rayhan hadn't always planned on becoming a delivery driver. 3 years ago, he had been a promising engineering student at the local community college with dreams of designing sustainable buildings that would transform the city skyline. His parents, both school teachers in the small town where he grew up, had saved every penny they could to help him with his education. But fate had other plans when his father suffered a severe stroke, requiring expensive medical treatments that quickly depleted the family's modest savings. Without hesitation, Rayhan had put his education on hold, moved to Westshore City, where wages were higher, and took whatever jobs he could find. Eventually, he settled into working for Speed Meal, a food delivery app that promised flexible hours. The pay wasn't great, just enough to cover his tiny studio apartment in the city's eastern district, send money home for his father's medications, and keep himself fed with the most basic necessities. Despite these challenges, Rayhan maintained a resilient spirit and unwavering optimism that set him apart from many others in similar circumstances. He never complained about his situation, not even when wealthy customers failed to tip or when restaurant staff treated him dismissively. Every person has their struggles, he would often remind himself. Mine just happened to be visible right now. What truly distinguished Rayhan was his habit of gratitude. Each morning before starting his deliveries, he would take a moment to give thanks for what he had, his health, his ability to help his parents, and the motorcycle that, despite its flaws, remained his faithful companion in earning a living. This daily ritual of counting his blessings kept Rayhan's heart light, even when his wallet was empty. His apartment was sparse, but meticulously kept. A small folding table served as both his dining area and desk. His bed was a simple mattress on the floor, covered with a colorful quilt his mother had sewn for him when he left home. The walls were adorned with a few photographs of his family and inspirational quotes he had written on colorful paper. "Wealth is not in having many possessions, but in having few wants," read one such quote above his small kitchenette. On this particular Tuesday in April, Rayhan awoke before his alarm clock had a chance to ring. Outside his window, the sky was just beginning to lighten, painting the cityscape in soft hues of purple and gold. He performed his morning prayers, grateful for another day of opportunities, then checked his phone to see if any early morning delivery requests had come through. The screen showed nothing but a message from his mother saying his father had a good day yesterday, news that brought a genuine smile to Rayhan's face. As he prepared for the day, Rayhan carefully packed the lunch he had made the night before, a simple meal of rice, lentils, and the last piece of grilled chicken from Sunday's cooking. Food prices had been rising steadily, and Rayhan had been stretching his ingredients as far as they would go. This meal would need to sustain him through what would likely be a 10-hour shift of constant movement. One more week until payday, he reminded himself as he secured his lunch in the small insulated bag he carried. The end of the month was always the tightest, but he had learned to manage. His delivery bag was ready by the door, and his speed meal app was updated and running on his phone. With one last look around his small space, Rayhan locked his apartment and headed down 4 flights of stairs to where his motorcycle waited. The early morning air carried a slight chill, and the city was just beginning to stir. Delivery drivers, like Rayhan, were among the first to witness the city awakening. Bakery workers pulling fresh bread from ovens, street cleaners finishing their shifts, and early commuters hurrying to beat the rush hour. There was a camaraderie among these early risers, a mutual acknowledgement of those who kept the city functioning while others slept. Rayhan's first order came through at 6:45 a.m. Breakfast deliveries from a popular cafe to an office building downtown. As he secured his helmet and started his motorcycle, a brief moment of worry crossed his mind. The check engine light had come on yesterday, blinking ominously before going dark again. He couldn't afford repairs right now, not with his father's. New medication costs. Just hold together for a little longer, he whispered to the bike as he patted its handlebars affectionately. The morning rush kept Rayhan busy, darting between cafes, bagel shops, and juice bars to deliver breakfast to offices across the financial district. These early hours were crucial. Business professionals tipped well for getting their morning coffee and pastries delivered promptly. By 11 a.m., Rayhan had completed 12 deliveries and earned enough to cover his portion of his father's medication for the week. His phone indicated a lull in orders, the quiet period between breakfast and lunch rush, so he navigated towards Central Park, a sprawling green space in the heart of Westshore where he sometimes rested between shifts. The park offered a respite from the concrete and glass of the city. Rayhan found his usual bench near the eastern fountain, where the sound of water provided a soothing background to his brief break. He checked his earnings so far. Decent, but not exceptional. The lunch rush would be starting soon, and he needed to position himself near the restaurant district to catch the most lucrative orders. As he sat contemplating the day ahead, the rumbling of his stomach reminded him of his packed lunch. He reached for his insulated bag and carefully unwrapped his meal. The aroma of the spiced lentils made his mouth water, his mother's recipe, adapted to his limited cooking facilities. Just as he was about to take his first bite, a sound caught his attention. Seated on a bench about 20 feet away was a young girl, perhaps 12 or 13 years old, dressed in what appeared to be a private school uniform, a pleated skirt and navy blazer with an embroidered crest. What struck Rayhan as unusual was that she was alone. No parent or guardian in sight, and she was quietly crying, her shoulders shaking with the effort to remain silent. Rayhan hesitated. In the city, one learned to be cautious about approaching strangers, especially children, but something about the girl's obvious distress tugged at his conscience. He carefully rewrapped his lunch and approached slowly, making sure to maintain a respectful distance. "Excuse me," he said gently. "Are you all right? Do you need help?" The girl looked up, startled. Her face was tear-streaked. But what Rayhan immediately noticed were her eyes, intelligent and deep brown, currently filled with a mixture of embarrassment and relief at being addressed. "I'm fine," she said automatically, the practiced response of someone unused to sharing their troubles. But her stomach betrayed her with a loud growl that echoed in the quiet corner of the park. Rayhan understood immediately. "You're hungry," he stated simply, not as a question. The girl's cheeks flushed and she looked down at her hands. "I forgot my lunch and my wallet today. It's stupid, really. I was rushing because I was late for school, and now I can't buy anything to eat." "Where is your school?" Rayhan asked. "Westshore Academy," she replied, naming one of the most prestigious private schools in the city, located on the far side of the park. "I was supposed to meet my father's driver after school, but he texted that he's stuck in traffic across town and won't be here for at least another hour." Rayhan nodded, understanding the situation. Without hesitation, he extended his insulated bag containing his precious lunch. "Please take this. It's nothing fancy, but it's good food." The girl's eyes widened in surprise. "I can't take your lunch," she protested. "I insist," Rayhan said with a warm smile. "I've had plenty to eat today." It was a lie, but one he told without regret. "Besides, I'll be picking up more food during my deliveries." Another small untruth, but the girl's hungry expression made any sacrifice worthwhile. Still hesitant, the girl accepted the bag. "Thank you. That's really kind of you." "My name is Rayhan," he offered. "I'm Sophia," she replied, carefully opening the container. The aroma of spices filled the air between them. "This smells amazing." "My mother's recipe," Rayhan said proudly. "Enjoy it." As Sophia took her first bite, her expression transformed from hesitation to delight. "This is delicious. Did your mother make it?" "No, I did," Rayhan laughed. "One of the few benefits of living alone, I've had to learn to cook for myself." While Sophia ate, Rayhan sat on the far end of her bench, keeping a respectful distance, but ensuring she wasn't alone. They chatted easily, Rayhan explaining his work as a delivery driver and carefully avoiding any mention of his financial struggles. Sophia talked about her school, her love of mathematics, and her dream of becoming an architect someday. What Rayhan didn't know as he sat beside Sophia was that she wasn't just any private school student. Her father, Alexander Mercer, was the founder and CEO of Mercer Tech Industries, a global technology conglomerate with headquarters in the tallest building in Westshore City's skyline. The Mercer name appeared on hospitals, university buildings, and charitable foundations throughout the city. Alexander Mercer was not just wealthy. He was one of the 20 richest people in the world, with a net worth that most people couldn't comprehend. "Do you always give your lunch away to strangers?" Sophia asked between bites, her earlier tears now completely forgotten. Rayhan laughed lightly. "Not always, but I believe in sharing when someone needs something more than I do. My parents always taught me that true wealth isn't measured by what you have, but by what you're willing to give away." Sophia considered this thoughtfully. "That's not what most people in my life say about wealth," she admitted. "At my school, everyone competes over who has the newest phone or whose parents bought the most expensive vacation home." "And what do you think about that?" Rayhan asked, genuinely curious. Sophia shrugged, stirring the remaining rice with her plastic fork. "It seems silly sometimes. My dad works all the time to make more money, but he's never home. I'd rather have less stuff and more time with him." She hesitated before adding, "Don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for everything I have. I know I'm lucky. It's just sometimes the simplest things are the most important," Rayhan finished. "For her, exactly," Sophia agreed, her expression brightening at being understood. As Sophia finished the meal, Rayhan's phone beeped with a notification. The lunch rush was beginning, and orders were coming in rapidly. He needed to get back to work, but he felt uncomfortable leaving the young girl alone in the park, even though she assured him her father's driver would arrive soon. "I have to get back to my deliveries," Rayhan explained, standing up and adjusting his delivery bag. "Will you be all right waiting here?" "I'll be fine," Sophia insisted. "I come to this park all the time. Besides, Bernard will be here soon. He's never late for long." She handed back the empty container with a grateful smile. "Thank you again for lunch. It was the best thing I've eaten all week." Rayhan doubted that his simple homemade meal could compare to whatever gourmet food she likely ate at home, but he appreciated the compliment. "It was my pleasure. Stay safe, Sophia." As Rayhan turned to leave, Sophia called after him, "Wait, what's your full name? And which delivery company do you work for?" Something in her tone made Rayhan pause. "Rayhan Ahmed," he replied. "I work for Speed Meal. Why do you ask?" "No reason," Sophia said with a smile that suggested otherwise. "I just like to remember people who are kind to me." With a final wave, Rayhan hurried back to his motorcycle. He had already missed 2 potential delivery assignments while talking with Sophia, and he couldn't afford to lose any more income today. As he started his engine, he glanced back toward the bench, where Sophia was now typing something on her phone, her earlier distress completely transformed into focused determination. The afternoon stretched into a blur of deliveries across the city. Rayhan pushed thoughts of his empty stomach aside, focusing instead on the satisfaction of helping Sophia. The memory of her genuine appreciation for his simple meal warmed him more than any food could have. He took on every available delivery, working without a break to make up for the earnings he had missed earlier. By early evening, exhaustion was setting in. Rayhan had completed 28 deliveries since morning, a personal record. His motorcycle's check engine light had come on twice more during the day, each time causing his heart to sink with worry about potential repair costs. As the dinner rush approached, Rayhan pulled into a gas station to refuel both his motorcycle and his water bottle. While waiting in line to pay for his gas, Rayhan's phone pinged with a notification from his bank app. Thinking it was probably an overdraft warning, a common occurrence near the end of the month, he opened it with a sigh. What he saw made him blink in confusion. There was a new deposit in his account for $500 from an anonymous, sourced through an instant transfer service. The description simply read, "For lunch." Rayhan's first instinct was that there had been some mistake. He checked the transaction details, but everything seemed legitimate. Could it be from Sophia? But how would she have gotten his bank information? And why would anyone pay $500 for a simple meal of rice and lentils? Before he could puzzle it out further, his Speed Meal app alerted him to a high-priority delivery with a substantial guaranteed tip. The destination was in Hillcrest Heights, the most exclusive residential neighborhood in Westshore City, where mansions were hidden behind elaborate security gates and private driveways stretched for hundreds of yards. Rayhan had rarely delivered to this area. Most residents there had private chefs or used more upscale delivery services. Despite his confusion about the mysterious deposit, Rayhan couldn't pass up the lucrative delivery. He paid for his gas and headed toward the restaurant, an exclusive Japanese fusion place that normally had a 3-week waiting list for reservations. When he arrived, the hostess looked at him doubtfully until he showed his delivery confirmation. She disappeared into the back and returned with a large bag, carefully packed with what smelled like an exquisite meal. "This order has been double-checked by the chef personally," she informed him with unusual deference. "Please ensure it arrives promptly and intact." The navigation led Rayhan through the winding roads of Hillcrest Heights, eventually stopping at an imposing gate with a discreet M worked into the wrought iron design. A security guard stepped out from a small booth as Rayhan approached. "Delivery for the Mercer residence," Rayhan stated, showing his app confirmation. The guard nodded, already expecting him. "You've been cleared for direct delivery to the main house. Follow the driveway all the way up and park by the front entrance. Someone will meet you there." As the massive gates swung open, Rayhan felt a mixture of curiosity and intimidation. The Mercer name was familiar. Everyone in Westshore knew of the tech billionaire whose company had transformed the city's economy. The driveway seemed to stretch endlessly, curving through immaculately landscaped grounds. In the distance, Rayhan could see a modern mansion of glass and stone, architecturally stunning in its clean lines and dramatic lighting. As Rayhan approached the circular driveway in front of the mansion, his motorcycle's engine made an alarming sound, a grinding metallic noise followed by sputtering. The check engine light was now solidly illuminated rather than blinking. He managed to coast the final few yards before the engine died completely, coming to a stop just short of the grand entrance. A middle-aged man in a suit, presumably a butler or house manager, was waiting at the door. His expression betrayed mild surprise at the sight of Rayhan pushing his now silent motorcycle the remaining distance. "I apologize for the delay," Rayhan said, trying to maintain his professionalism despite his embarrassment about his motorcycle's failure. "The delivery is intact and on time." He handed over the bag of food, expecting to be dismissed immediately. Instead, the man said, "Mr. Mercer would like to speak with you personally. Please follow me." Bewildered, Rayhan gestured toward his motorcycle. "I can't just leave it here. It's broken down, but it's everything I have." "Don't worry about your vehicle," the man assured him. "It will be taken care of. Mr. Mercer insists on thanking you himself." Completely confused now, Rayhan followed the man into the mansion. The interior was just as impressive as the exterior. Soaring ceilings, museum-quality art on the walls, and furnishings that looked both expensive and comfortable. They passed through a grand foyer and down a hallway before stopping at a set of double doors. "Wait here a moment," the man instructed before slipping through the doors. Rayhan stood awkwardly in the hallway, acutely aware of his worn jeans and the Speed Meal logo on his shirt. Why would a billionaire want to speak with a delivery driver? Had he done something wrong? Was there a problem with the order? Before his anxious thoughts could spiral further, the doors opened again and the butler gestured him inside. "Mr. Mercer will see you now." Rayhan stepped into what appeared to be a home office, more comfortable than corporate, but still impressive, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a wall of windows overlooking the city lights beginning to twinkle in the early evening. Behind a substantial desk stood a tall man with salt and pepper hair and piercing eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they saw. Alexander Mercer was known for being intensely private. Few recent photographs of him existed in the media, but his presence was unmistakable. What Rayhan didn't expect was to see Sophia sitting in one of the chairs across from the desk, a broad smile on her face as she spotted him. "Dad," she said excitedly, "this is him! This is Rayhan, the one I told you about." Alexander Mercer extended his hand. "Mr. Ahmed, I understand I have much to thank you for." Rayhan stood frozen for a moment, his mind struggling to connect the dots between the hungry girl in the park and this palatial office. He shook Alexander Mercer's extended hand, feeling the firm grip of someone accustomed to making million-dollar deals with a handshake. "Sir, I'm afraid I don't understand," Rayhan said honestly. "I just delivered your dinner." Alexander Mercer gestured to a chair beside Sophia. "Please sit down. And yes, you delivered our dinner, but according to my daughter, you delivered something far more valuable earlier today." As Rayhan cautiously took a seat, Sophia beamed at him. "I told Dad everything, about how you gave me your only lunch when I was hungry and crying in the park." "It was nothing, really," Rayhan insisted, uncomfortable with the attention. "Anyone would have done the same." Alexander Mercer's expression suggested he disagreed. "In my experience, Mr. Ahmed, very few people would give their only meal to a stranger, especially when they themselves are struggling financially." He studied Rayhan with those penetrating eyes. "Sophia has a gift for reading people. She told me you were hungry yourself, but lied about it to make her feel better about accepting your food." Rayhan felt heat rising to his cheeks. "Sir, Please," Alexander raised a hand. "I'm not criticizing you, quite the opposite. I'm impressed by your kindness and integrity." He leaned back in his chair. "Do you know why I wanted to meet you?" "I assumed there was some issue with your delivery," Rayhan admitted. Alexander laughed, a warm sound that seemed at odds with his powerful presence. "The delivery was perfect. I wanted to meet the young man who showed my daughter more compassion in 15 minutes than many of her privileged peers have shown in years." His expression grew more serious. "Sophia came home today talking about you, about your philosophy on sharing and true wealth. She mentioned that your motorcycle was having problems. Understanding dawned on Rayhan. The $500, that was from you? From Sophia, actually, Alexander corrected. From her personal allowance. Though I would have sent more had I known about it beforehand, Sophia interjected eagerly. I thought it would help fix your motorcycle. Dad's assistant helped me find you through the speed meal driver database. Rayhan was speechless. The amount was more than a week's earnings for him. Far more than the simple lunch was worth. I can't accept that much money for just sharing my lunch, he finally managed to say. Alexander Mercer studied him thoughtfully. Your reaction confirms what Sophia told me about your character. Most people would simply take the money without question. He stood up and walked to the window, gazing out at the cityscape. Mr. Ahmed, I didn't become successful by accident. I built Mercer Tech by recognizing potential and integrity when I see it. He turned back to face Rayhan. Tell me about yourself. Sophia mentioned you were studying engineering before financial difficulties forced you to stop. Surprised that Sophia had remembered that detail from their brief conversation, Rayhan nodded. Yes, sir. I was studying sustainable architectural engineering at Westshore Community College. I completed 2 years before my father's health required me to work full-time. And you continued to support your parents while working as a delivery driver. They gave me everything they had, so I could have opportunities they never did, Rayhan explained simply. It's my duty and honor to help them now. Alexander Mercer's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Family obligation is something I understand well. He returned to his desk and pressed an intercom button. Janet, please bring in the folder we prepared. A moment later, a professional-looking woman entered with a leather portfolio, which she handed to Alexander before quietly exiting. Alexander opened it and removed several documents. Mr. Ahmed, I have a proposition for you. Mercer Tech has an educational scholarship program for promising students facing financial hardship. The scholarship covers full tuition, books, and a living stipend. He slid a brochure across the desk. Additionally, we offer paid internships in our engineering division that accommodate part-time class schedules. Rayhan stared at the brochure, unable to believe what he was hearing. Sir, I don't know what to say. This is incredibly generous. But before you object, Alexander interrupted, let me be clear. This is not charity. The scholarship is merit-based, and recipients are selected through a rigorous process. Your academic records from your previous studies would qualify you to apply. He paused. However, I will admit that your interaction with Sophia has brought you to my attention sooner than might have otherwise happened. Sophia was practically bouncing in her seat with excitement. Dad's company needs people like you, Rayhan. People who think differently about what's really important. Alexander nodded at his daughter's enthusiasm. Sophia is right. Technical skills can be taught, but character and perspective are innate. The engineering solutions of tomorrow will require both. Rayhan's mind was spinning. The opportunity being presented would change everything. He could continue his education while still supporting his parents. But doubt crept in. What about the other applicants? I wouldn't want to take an opportunity from someone who might deserve it more. The program accepts multiple scholars each year, Alexander assured him. You wouldn't be taking anyone else's place, and based on your academic history, you're exactly the kind of student the program was designed for. Still, Rayhan hesitated. This is overwhelming, sir. It feels like too much in return for such a small act. Alexander's expression grew thoughtful. Let me tell you something, Mr. Ahmed. I grew up with very little. My father abandoned our family when I was young, and my mother worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. There were many days when we didn't know where our next meal would come from. His voice remained steady, but emotion flickered behind his eyes. One winter, a stranger gave my mother a grocery store gift card anonymously. It wasn't a fortune, but it meant we ate properly for 2 weeks. He stood again, pacing slowly. I never forgot that kindness. As I built my company and my wealth grew, I promised myself I would create opportunities for others facing similar struggles. The scholarship program is part of that promise. He turned to face Rayhan directly. Sometimes a small act of kindness reveals a person's true character, and that character deserves to be rewarded with opportunity, Sophia added softly. Dad always says that talent is distributed equally throughout society, but opportunity isn't. Rayhan looked between father and daughter, deeply moved by Alexander's personal story and the sincerity in both their expressions. I don't know how to thank you for this chance, he said finally. There is one condition, Alexander said, his tone becoming more businesslike. The scholarship requires maintaining a 3.5 GPA and participating in our community service initiative, where scholarship recipients mentor younger students from disadvantaged backgrounds. A genuine smile spread across Rayhan's face. That wouldn't be a condition, sir. That would be an honor. Alexander seemed pleased with this response. Excellent. Now there's the matter of your motorcycle. He pressed the intercom again. Janet, is Rodriguez still here? Yes, sir, came the prompt reply. He's in the garage with Mr. Ahmed's motorcycle. Alexander turned back to Rayhan. Mr. Rodriguez is our head of vehicle maintenance. He maintains all the company vehicles and my personal collection. He's examining your motorcycle now. As if on cue, there was a knock at the door, and a man in a mechanic's uniform entered, wiping his hands on a cloth. Mr. Mercer, about the young man's bike. This is Mr. Ahmed, Alexander introduced. It's his motorcycle you've been examining. Rodriguez nodded respectfully to Rayhan. Sir, I've looked over your motorcycle. The main issue is the timing chain, which has stretched beyond serviceable limits. There's also significant wear on the clutch assembly and issues with the fuel injection system. Rayhan's heart sank. Those repairs would cost far more than the $500 Sophia had sent, probably more than the motorcycle was worth. Can it be fixed? Alexander asked directly. Rodriguez hesitated. It could be, but honestly, the cost of the repairs would exceed the value of the vehicle. It's an older model with high mileage. In my professional opinion, it would be more economical to replace it. Alexander considered. This information then turned to Rayhan. Do you have any attachment to that specific motorcycle? It served me well for 3 years, Rayhan answered honestly. But no, I'm not sentimentally attached to it. It's just been my only means of transportation and livelihood. Alexander nodded decisively. Rodriguez, please arrange for a suitable replacement from our fleet. Something reliable, economical and appropriate for delivery work. Rodriguez's eyebrows rose slightly. Sir, the only vehicle in our fleet that would be suitable would be one of the new hybrid scooters we acquired for the security team to use on campus. Perfect, Alexander replied. Have it prepared and ready for Mr. Ahmed before he leaves tonight. Rayhan was stunned. Mr. Mercer, I can't accept a new vehicle. The scholarship opportunity is already more than generous. Consider it a company investment, Alexander said firmly. The internship portion of the program requires reliable transportation to move between campus and our facilities. Without reliable transportation, you wouldn't be able to fulfill those obligations. His tone made it clear this point wasn't up for negotiation. Besides, the scooters were purchased in bulk for company use. This is simply allocating resources efficiently. After Rodriguez left to prepare the scooter, a comfortable silence fell over the office. Rayhan was still processing everything that had happened in the last hour, from his motorcycle breaking down to being offered a life-changing scholarship and a new vehicle. It seemed impossible that his simple act of sharing lunch with a hungry girl had led to this moment. I think we've given Mr. Ahmed quite a lot to think about, Alexander finally said. Perhaps we should continue this conversation over dinner. The food you delivered is getting cold, and I suspect you haven't eaten since this morning. At the mention of food, Rayhan's stomach betrayed him with an audible growl, causing Sophia to giggle. Alexander smiled and pressed the intercom once more. "Janet, please have dinner set for 3 in the informal dining room." As they walked through the mansion toward the dining area, Sophia fell into step beside Rayhan. "Our chef makes amazing food, but I was telling the truth about your lunch being the best thing I've eaten all week," she said earnestly. "There was something special about it, like I could taste that it was made with care." Rayhan smiled at her perceptiveness. "My mother always says that the most important ingredient in any dish is the intention behind it. When you cook with love and gratitude, people can taste the difference." "Your mother sounds wise," Alexander commented from ahead of them. "I'd like to hear more about your parents during dinner." The informal dining room turned out to be a warm, welcoming space, with a round table that could comfortably seat 8. The walls featured family photographs rather than expensive artwork, and the lighting was soft and inviting. A uniformed staff member was arranging the Japanese fusion meal Rayhan had delivered on elegant serving dishes. Once they were seated and the first course was served, Alexander turned the conversation to Rayhan's background. "Tell me about where you grew up, Mr. Ahmed. Please, call me Rayhan," he responded, still slightly uncomfortable with the formality. "I grew up in Meadowbrook, a small town about 2 hours from Westshore. My father taught mathematics at the local high school, and my mother taught literature at the same school. They always emphasized education and service to others. Teachers are the backbone of society." Alexander nodded approvingly. "My mother was a teacher as well, when she wasn't working her other jobs to make ends meet." As they ate, Rayhan shared stories of his childhood. The community garden his parents had helped establish, the tutoring program they ran on weekends, their modest home filled with books instead of luxury items. Alexander listened intently, occasionally asking questions that revealed genuine interest rather than polite conversation. Sophia was equally engaged, especially when Rayhan mentioned his younger sister, who was now studying medicine on a scholarship. "You must be very proud of her," she said. "I am," Rayhan confirmed. "She worked incredibly hard to earn that scholarship. Once I'm back in school and eventually working as an engineer, I hope to help with her expenses so she can focus entirely on her studies." Alexander studied Rayhan thoughtfully. "Family supporting family, it's a beautiful cycle when it works properly." He set down his chopsticks. "If you don't mind my asking, what is the nature of your father's health condition?" Rayhan explained. "About his father's stroke 3 years ago, the partial paralysis that had left him unable to teach, and the ongoing physical therapy that was slowly helping him regain some mobility. The medical bills were substantial initially, and the monthly medications and therapy sessions are still a significant expense. My mother had to reduce her teaching hours to care for him, so their income decreased just as expenses increased." "And there was no extended family who could help?" Alexander asked. "My parents were both only children, and my grandparents have passed away," Rayhan explained. "We have a strong community in Meadowbrook, and neighbors help where they can, but everyone has their own struggles." Alexander nodded thoughtfully. "Mercer Tech has a medical foundation that specializes in stroke rehabilitation research. I'd like to have one of our specialists consult on your father's case, if you and your parents would be comfortable with that." Rayhan was once again overwhelmed by the generosity. "That would be incredible, but I couldn't ask for—" "You're not asking," Alexander interrupted gently. "I'm offering. The foundation exists precisely to help people access treatments they might not otherwise be able to afford. Your father's case could provide valuable insights for our research, while potentially improving his quality of life." Sophia added eagerly, "Dad's foundation developed a new therapy technique last year that's helping stroke patients regain mobility faster. Your dad might be a good candidate for it." Before Rayhan could respond, his phone buzzed with a speed meal notification. He apologized for the interruption and checked the screen, seeing that his absence from the platform had been noticed. There was a message asking if he was still working or if he needed to end his shift. "I should probably respond to this," he said apologetically. "They'll start assigning my orders to other drivers soon." Alexander waved dismissively. "Of course, but I think perhaps your days as a delivery driver might be coming to an end if you're amenable to starting the internship program soon. The spring semester at Westshore College begins in 3 weeks, which would give you time to make arrangements with your parents and settle your affairs with Speed Meal." The reality of how quickly his life was changing hit Rayhan all at once. "This is all happening so fast," he admitted. "This morning I was worried about how to make my rent payment, and now change can be overwhelming, even when it's positive," Alexander acknowledged. "The scholarship and internship offers aren't going to disappear if you need time to think about them. I understand this is a significant shift in your life's trajectory." Sophia, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up. "Dad, maybe Rayhan could start part-time at first. That way he could still help his parents with his current job while transitioning into the program." Alexander considered his daughter's suggestion. "That's an excellent point, Sophia. We could certainly structure the initial phase of the internship to be part-time, allowing for a gradual transition." He turned to Rayhan. "Would that alleviate some of your concerns?" Rayhan nodded gratefully. "It would, yes. I wouldn't want to leave Speed Meal abruptly when they provided me with steady work for so long, and I'd need to ensure my parents' needs are covered during the transition." "A man of loyalty and responsibility," Alexander observed approvingly. "Those qualities will serve you well in your career, Rayhan." He gestured to Janet, who had appeared discreetly at the doorway. "I believe Mr. Rodriguez has news about your transportation." Rodriguez entered, looking pleased with himself. "The scooter is ready, Mr. Ahmed. I've taken the liberty of transferring your delivery bag and personal items from your old motorcycle. The scooter has been fully charged, registered in your name, and insured under the company fleet policy. I've also added a smartphone mount for your delivery app and a reinforced storage compartment for secure deliveries." Alexander stood. "Excellent work, Rodriguez. Perhaps you could show Rayhan his new vehicle while Janet prepares the scholarship paperwork for him to review." As Rayhan followed Rodriguez toward the garage, he glanced back to see Alexander and Sophia watching him with genuine smiles. This morning, he had been a struggling delivery driver with a failing motorcycle and dwindling bank account. Now he was walking through a billionaire's mansion toward a new vehicle, a scholarship, and an internship that would transform his future. The garage was a cavernous space housing an impressive collection of vehicles, luxury sedans, sports cars, and even a few vintage models. In the midst of these expensive automobiles sat a sleek, modern scooter in a deep blue color. It looked brand new, with a small Mercetec logo discreetly placed on the side. "This is the Electra 3000, Rodriguez explained with evident pride. "It's our newest acquisition for the campus security team. Top speed of 60 miles per hour, range of 120 miles on a single charge, and it recharges to 80% in just 30 minutes. He ran his hand along the scooter's sleek frame. The storage compartment is insulated to keep food deliveries hot or cold, and it's got an anti-theft system linked to a smartphone app." Rayhan circled the scooter in awe. It was far more advanced than anything he could have afforded on his own. Probably worth 10 times what his old motorcycle had been worth, even when it was running properly. "The helmet is in the compartment," Rodriguez continued, pressing a button to reveal a spacious storage area containing a matching blue helmet with an integrated communication system. "The helmet links to your phone for navigation, audio, and hands-free. And calls. Much safer than looking down at your phone while driving." "I don't know what to say," Rayhan admitted, carefully lifting the helmet. Even this accessory felt expensive and high quality in his hands. Rodriguez smiled knowingly. Mr. Mercer doesn't do things halfway. When he decides to help someone, he makes sure they have everything they need to succeed. He handed Rayhan a small card. My contact information. If you have any questions about the scooter or need any maintenance, call me directly. It's covered under the company's service plan. After a brief tutorial on the scooter's features, Rodriguez led Rayhan back to the main house, where Janet was waiting with a folder of documents. These are the scholarship and internship applications, she explained, her professional demeanor softened by a genuine smile. Mr. Mercer has already approved them, but the university and HR department will need them processed officially. I've highlighted where you need to sign. As Rayhan reviewed the documents, he was astonished by the comprehensiveness of the scholarship. Beyond tuition and books, it included a monthly stipend that was nearly double what he currently earned from speed meal, health insurance coverage that could extend to dependents, and even provisions for academic support services like tutoring if needed. The internship agreement was equally impressive. Flexible hours built around his class schedule, mentorship from senior engineers, and a clear path to full-time employment after graduation if his performance met expectations. There was even a clause about potential patent sharing if he contributed to company innovations during his internship. This is incredible, Rayhan murmured as he signed the last page. I never expected anything like this. Janet collected the signed documents efficiently. Mr. Mercer believes in investing in promising individuals. I've worked for him for 15 years, and I've seen how these investments change lives. She handed him a business card. My direct line. If you encounter any obstacles with university administration or the scholarship process, call me immediately. Rayhan tucked the card carefully into his wallet, next to the worn photograph of his parents he always carried. The contrast between these two items, one representing his past and responsibilities, the other a bridge to his future, wasn't lost on him. Janet escorted him back to the informal dining room, where Alexander and Sophia were engaged in conversation. They looked up as Rayhan entered, their discussion pausing. All set with the paperwork? Alexander inquired. Yes, sir. I've signed everything. Rayhan hesitated, then added, I'd like to call my parents and tell them about this opportunity and that's all right. Of course, Alexander agreed readily. You should use the terrace. The view of the city is quite spectacular at night, and you'll have privacy for your call. He nodded to Janet, who led Rayhan through glass doors onto an expansive terrace overlooking Westshore City. The view was indeed breathtaking. The entire cityscape spread out below, a tapestry of lights against the darkness. From this elevation, Rayhan could see landmarks he passed daily during his deliveries from an entirely new perspective. The university campus, where he would soon resume his studies, was visible in the distance, its distinctive clock tower illuminated against the night sky. With trembling fingers, Rayhan dialed his parents' number. His mother answered on the third ring, her voice warm but tired. Rayhan, is everything all right? You usually don't call this late. Everything is more than all right, Ami, he replied, his voice catching with emotion. Something amazing has happened. Over the next 15 minutes, Rayhan explained the day's extraordinary events, meeting Sophia, the scholarship offer, the internship opportunity, and even the consultation for his father's medical condition. His mother's initial skepticism gave way to cautious joy, and he could hear her explaining everything to his father in the background, his father's excited questions becoming increasingly animated. It sounds too good to be true, his mother finally said, happy disbelief evident in her voice. Are you sure this is legitimate, Beta? It's real, Ami. I'm standing on Mr. Mercer's terrace right now. Mercer Tech, the big technology company whose headquarters we saw when you visited the city last year. Rayhan took a deep breath. I'll be able to finish my degree without worrying about money. I'll still be able to help with Abu's medical expenses, and their foundation might even be able to provide better treatment for him. Allah is great, his mother whispered. From one act of kindness, so many blessings have flowed. I shared my lunch with a hungry child, Rayhan said simply. I didn't do it expecting anything in return. That's precisely why you were rewarded, his mother replied with the wisdom that had guided him throughout his life. True charity expects nothing in return. Allah sees what is in our hearts. After promising to visit home soon with all the details, Rayhan ended the call and stood for a moment in the cool night air, allowing the reality of the day's events to settle over him. From his position high above the city, he could see the park where he had met Sophia just hours ago. How dramatically his life had changed since that moment. A movement behind him alerted Rayhan to Alexander Mercer's presence. The billionaire joined him at the terrace railing, gazing out at the city his company had helped transform. How did your parents take the news? Alexander asked after a comfortable silence. They're overwhelmed but grateful, Rayhan answered honestly. My mother says Allah rewards those who give without expectation. Alexander nodded thoughtfully. Your mother sounds like a wise woman. In my experience, the universe tends to return. Kindness multiplied. They stood side by side, the billionaire and the delivery driver, looking out at the same city from the same vantage point, but with vastly different journeys that had brought them there. You know, Alexander said contemplatively, what struck me about Sophia's story wasn't just that you gave her your lunch. It was that you did so with dignity. You didn't make her feel like a charity case, but rather like someone worthy of sharing with. He turned to face Rayhan directly. That's rare, especially from someone who has every reason to hold tightly to what little they have. Rayhan considered this. My parents taught me that what we have isn't as important as what we do with it. Even when we had very little, we always shared our table with neighbors or travelers who had less. That philosophy is disappearing in today's world, Alexander observed. I've spent years trying to instill those values in Sophia, but it's challenging when she's surrounded by wealth and privilege. A hint of vulnerability crossed his normally composed features. Since her mother died 5 years ago, I've worried about Sophia becoming isolated in this bubble of affluence, disconnected from the realities most people face. The mention of Sophia's mother explained the absence Rayhan had noticed. No photographs of a woman who might be Alexander's wife. No mention of Sophia's mother during dinner. I'm sorry for your loss, he said quietly. Alexander acknowledged the sympathy with a slight nod. Charlotte was the compass of our family. She came from humble beginnings, like I did, and never lost perspective, even as our wealth grew. She was the one who established our foundation's focus on education and medical research. His gaze returned to the cityscape. After she died, I threw myself into work. It was easier than facing an empty house, easier than seeing her in Sophia's eyes and mannerisms. And Sophia? Rayhan asked gently. Managed as best she could with a father who was physically present but emotionally distant, Alexander admitted, with evident regret. That's changing now. Seeing her excited about your story, about how helping you aligns with her mother's values, it was a wake-up call for me. Before Rayhan could respond, the terrace doors opened, and Sophia herself appeared. Dad, Janet says the driver is here to take Rayhan home whenever he's ready. Alexander checked his watch. It's getting late, and I'm sure Rayhan has had quite an overwhelming day. He turned to Rayhan. I've arranged for a car to take you home. Tonight, Rodriguez will follow with your new scooter. I don't want you riding unfamiliar equipment in the dark when you're tired. That's not necessary. Rayhan began to object, but Alexander raised a hand to stop him. I insist. It's a safety precaution, nothing more. You can start using the scooter tomorrow after you've had rest and daylight to become accustomed to it. Sophia, approached the railing where they stood, her expression curious. "Were you two having a serious conversation? You both looked so thoughtful when I came out." Alexander placed a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder. "We were discussing perspective and how different life looks depending on where you stand. Like how this city looks different from up here than it does from street level," Sophia asked perceptively. "Exactly like that," Rayhan confirmed with a smile. "Your father was sharing some wisdom with me." Alexander's phone buzzed with a message. "The car is waiting at the front entrance," he announced after checking it. "Sophia, why don't you walk with Rayhan while I speak with Janet about tomorrow's schedule?" As they made their way through the mansion toward the entrance, Sophia walked beside Rayhan with a bounce in her step. "Are you excited about coming to work with my dad's company?" she asked eagerly. "I'm still processing everything," Rayhan admitted. "It feels a bit like a dream." "It's not a dream," Sophia assured him. "Dad doesn't make offers he doesn't mean. When he sees potential in someone, he goes all in to help them succeed." She lowered her voice slightly. "He hasn't been this personally involved in a scholarship selection in a long time. Usually, he lets the foundation committee handle everything." Rayhan wasn't sure how to respond to this information. "I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'll work hard to prove I deserved his faith in me." Sophia studied him thoughtfully. "You know what I think? I think meeting you reminded Dad of himself when he was younger. He doesn't talk about it much, but he came from nothing too. He worked delivering newspapers when he was a teenager to help his mom pay rent." This revelation added another dimension to Rayhan's understanding of the tech billionaire. Perhaps their connection went beyond Rayhan's kindness to Sophia. Perhaps Alexander saw in Rayhan a reflection of his own past struggles and ambitions. Dad built his first computer from parts he found in dumpsters behind electronics stores. Sophia continued proudly. He taught himself programming from library books because they couldn't afford internet at home. They reached the grand foyer where Janet was waiting with a small package. "Mr. Ahmed, these are some additional materials about the scholarship program and internship that you might find useful," she explained, handing him the package. "There's also a temporary security pass for Mercer Tech headquarters, should you wish to tour the facilities before your official start date." Through the open front doors, Rayhan could see a sleek black car waiting in the circular driveway, his new blue scooter secured on a trailer behind it. The driver stood at attention beside the passenger door. Alexander rejoined them, extending his hand to Rayhan once more. "I look forward to seeing your progress, Rayhan. Janet will be in touch tomorrow to arrange a proper tour of our engineering department and to introduce you to your mentor." "Thank you, sir," Rayhan said, shaking his hand firmly, "for everything." "Thank you for reminding us what matters," Alexander replied with genuine warmth. He turned to his daughter. "Sophia, it's past your bedtime on a school night. Say goodnight to Rayhan." Instead of a simple goodnight, Sophia surprised everyone by giving Rayhan a quick hug. "Thank you for lunch today," she said with a grin. "You're very welcome," Rayhan replied, touched by the girl's affection. "Thank you for changing my life in return." As the driver held the car door open for him, Rayhan took one last look at the Mercer mansion, a place he could never have imagined entering just hours ago, let alone leaving with a scholarship, internship, and new vehicle. The vast stone and glass structure gleamed in the moonlight, windows illuminated from within like stars against the night. The drive back to his modest apartment was surreal. Rayhan sat in the plush leather back seat, watching the neighborhoods transition from the exclusive hillside estates to the middle-class communities, and finally to his own working-class district with its aging apartment buildings and corner stores. The driver, professional and courteous, maintained a respectful silence, allowing Rayhan space to process the day's events. When they arrived at his apartment building, Rodriguez was waiting in a separate vehicle, having driven ahead with the scooter He efficiently unloaded it, handed Rayhan the keys, and provided a few last-minute instructions about charging the battery. "The first charging station has already been installed in your building's parking area," Rodriguez informed him, pointing to a newly mounted unit near Rayhan's usual parking spot. "Mr. Mercer arranged for emergency installation this evening. The property manager has been notified that Mercer Tech is covering all associated electricity costs." Rayhan was once again struck by Alexander Mercer's thoroughness and generosity. "The man truly did think of everything. Thank you for delivering it safely," he told Rodriguez, "and for all your help today." After the Mercer Tech vehicles departed, Rayhan stood beside his new scooter in the quiet parking area, keys in hand, still trying to reconcile the dramatic shift in his circumstances. Just 12 hours ago, he had been worrying about how to afford repairs for his old motorcycle. Now, he had a state-of-the-art electric scooter, a full scholarship to complete his degree, an internship at one of the world's leading technology companies, and potential medical help for his father, all because he had shared his lunch with a hungry child. As he secured the scooter and made his way up to his apartment, Rayhan recalled his mother's words on the phone. "True charity expects nothing in return. Allah sees what is in our hearts." The universe had a way of balancing itself, of returning kindness multiplied. His tiny apartment looked different somehow when he entered. Not physically changed, but viewed through new eyes. The folding table that had seemed so inadequate now represented a beginning rather than a limitation. The mattress on the floor wouldn't be his sleeping arrangement forever. The inspirational quotes on his walls weren't just wishful thinking, but stepping stones to a future now within reach. Rayhan carefully placed the scholarship materials on his table and sat down to examine them more thoroughly. The package contained detailed information about the program, a university enrollment guide, and a personal note from Janet with a schedule for the next day, a tour of Mercer Tech at 10 a.m., followed by lunch with his assigned mentor, and a meeting with the university admissions office at 2 p.m. to expedite his re-enrollment for the spring semester. There was also an envelope containing a prepaid debit card with a note explaining it was his first stipend payment, advanced to help with immediate needs. Rayhan checked the balance on his phone and gasped. It was enough to cover 2 months of his rent, with plenty left over to send money to his parents. Sleep seemed impossible with his mind racing through the implications of everything that had happened, yet exhaustion from the emotional day was catching up with him. Rayhan performed his evening prayers with special gratitude, thanking Allah for the blessings that had come his way and asking for guidance to use these opportunities wisely. As he finally lay down to sleep, his phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from Speed Meal's administrative team, expressing concern about his extended absence during his shift and requesting an explanation. With everything that had happened, Rayhan had completely forgotten to formally end his delivery. Shift on the app, he composed a brief professional response, explaining that a personal emergency had arisen and apologizing for the oversight. He didn't mention the scholarship or internship yet, that news would require a proper conversation about reducing his hours or eventually resigning. One step at a time, he decided. Tomorrow would be soon enough to navigate that transition. Just as he was about to set his phone aside, a text message arrived from an unknown number. "This is Sophia Mercer. Dad doesn't know I'm texting you. Janet helped me get your number. Just wanted to say I'm really glad we met today. See you soon at Mercer Tech. P.S. Can you bring me that lentil recipe sometime? Our chef wants to try making it." Rayhan smiled at the girl's enthusiasm and directness. He replied with a simple, "I'd be happy to share the recipe. Thank you again for everything, Sophia. Sleep well." As he drifted towards sleep, Rayhan's thoughts returned to that moment in the Park, the hungry girl, his decision to share his lunch, their conversation about what truly matters in life. Such a small interaction, yet it had altered the course of his future. Perhaps the true lesson wasn't about charity being rewarded, but about how we are all connected in ways we can't foresee, how the smallest kindnesses can create ripples that transform lives. His last conscious thought before sleep claimed him was a prayer of gratitude for the blessing of crossing paths with Sophia Mercer in that park, and a promise to himself that he would pay forward the generosity he had received, creating new ripples of kindness that might transform other lives just as his had been transformed. The morning sunlight streamed through Rayhan's window, waking him earlier than usual. For a brief moment he wondered if yesterday had been an elaborate dream, too fantastical to be real. Then his eyes fell on the scholarship materials neatly arranged on his table, and the reality of his changed circumstances came flooding back. He reached for his phone to check the time and saw several notifications, a formal email from Mercertech's HR department confirming his tour today, a message from Janet with details about where to park and which entrance to use, and a reminder from his bank about the substantial deposit that had been made to his account. This was no dream. This was his new reality. Rayhan performed his morning prayers with special devotion, grateful for the blessings that had come his way. Afterward, he called his parents, speaking with them at greater length than their hurried conversation the night before. His father's voice sounded stronger than Rayhan had heard in months, energized by the prospect of specialized medical treatment from Mercertech's foundation. "Allah works in mysterious ways, my son," his father said. "Your kindness has opened doors that we could not have imagined." "It was a simple act, Abu," Rayhan replied modestly. "I only shared what I had." "The purest charity comes from those who give despite their own need," his father responded. "We have always taught you this, but you have truly lived it." After promising to visit them soon with complete details about all the developments, Rayhan ended the call and prepared for his day. Looking through his small wardrobe, he realized he didn't own anything appropriate for a visit to a major technology company's headquarters. His clothes were practical and well-maintained, but decidedly casual, suitable for food delivery, not for meeting with corporate executives. Checking the time, he saw that most stores wouldn't be open yet, but he'd have just enough time to purchase something more appropriate before his 10 a.m. appointment if he hurried. He decided to take his new scooter for its first ride, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness as he approached the gleaming vehicle in the parking area. The Electra 3000 started with a barely audible hum, its digital display illuminating, with battery level, range estimation, and a GPS map showing his current location. Following Rodriguez's instructions from the previous night, Rayhan connected his phone to the helmet's communication system, put on the sleek blue helmet, and carefully navigated out of the parking area into the morning traffic. The scooter handled beautifully, responsive yet stable, powerful yet easy to control. Its electric motor provided instant acceleration without the noise and vibration of his old motorcycle, making the ride smoother than anything Rayhan had experienced before. The navigation system guided him effortlessly to a modest department store that had just opened its doors for the day. With the first portion of his stipend available, Rayhan selected a simple but professional outfit: dark blue slacks, a light blue button-down shirt, and a navy blazer that fit him well. He added a pair of polished shoes and a modest watch, wanting to look presentable but not extravagant. The total cost was more than he would typically spend on clothing in several months, but he understood the importance of making a good impression at Mercertech. This wasn't vanity, it was investment in his future. Dressed in his new attire with his old clothes stored in the scooter's compartment, Rayhan followed the GPS directions to Mercertech headquarters. The imposing glass tower dominated the downtown skyline, its distinctive curved architecture making it instantly recognizable. As he approached, Rayhan felt a flutter of nervous excitement in his stomach. Just yesterday, he had driven past this building while delivering lunches, never imagining he would soon be walking through its doors as a scholarship recipient and future intern. The underground parking garage had a designated area for two-wheeled vehicles, and Rayhan found a charging station specifically marked with Mercer Tech visitor signage. As he secured his helmet in the storage compartment, a security guard approached him. "Mr. Ahmed?" the guard inquired politely. When Rayhan confirmed his identity, the guard continued. "Ms. Bellamy asked me to watch for you. If you'll follow me, I'll escort you to the main lobby where she's waiting." The guard led Rayhan to a private elevator that required a security badge to operate. "This goes directly to the executive floor," the guard explained. "Ms. Bellamy wanted to avoid having you process through general visitor registration on your first visit." The elevator rose swiftly and silently, its glass walls offering an increasingly panoramic view of the city as they ascended. Rayhan could see the park where he had met Sophia, now tiny from this height, and the various neighborhoods he had traversed countless times making deliveries. The perspective was entirely different from up here. The city laid out like a complex tapestry of interconnected communities rather than the series of individual streets and buildings he experienced at ground level. When the doors opened, Janet Bellamy was waiting in a sleek reception area decorated with awards, technology prototypes encased in glass, and digital displays showing Mercer Tech's latest innovations. She greeted Rayhan warmly, offering him coffee before they began the tour. "Mr. Mercer wanted to welcome you personally," she explained as she led him to a comfortable seating area, "but he was called to an emergency board meeting this morning. He sends his apologies and asked me to ensure you're well taken care of today." "That's completely understandable," Rayhan assured her. "I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here at all." Janet smiled approvingly at his response. "Your first meeting will be with Dr. Elena Kapoor, who heads our Sustainable Architecture Engineering Division. She'll be overseeing the internship portion of your scholarship. After that, you'll meet your student mentor, Lucas Chen, who was a scholarship recipient himself 3 years ago and is now completing his master's degree while working part-time in our materials research lab." As Rayhan sipped his coffee, Janet briefed him on the day's schedule and provided him with a security badge that would grant him limited access to the building. "This is temporary until your official internship begins," she explained. "But Mr. Mercer wanted you to be able to visit the engineering labs and university liaison office whenever you wish during the transition period." The tour began with the research and development floors, where teams of engineers and scientists worked on next-generation technologies. Rayhan was introduced to several department heads, each of whom took time to explain their work and ask about his academic interests. He was struck by how genuinely interested they seemed, treating him not as an outsider or charity case, but as a colleague-to-be. Dr. Kapoor was particularly engaging, showing Rayhan prototypes of sustainable building materials being developed. "In her department, Alexander mentioned your interest in sustainable architectural engineering," she said. "We're currently working on carbon-negative concrete alternatives that could revolutionize urban construction. Your academic focus aligns perfectly with our current research directions." She explained how his internship would be structured, beginning with rotations through various engineering teams to gain broad exposure to different specialties, followed by more focused work in his area of interest as he advanced in his studies. "The scholarship program isn't just financial support," Dr. Kapoor emphasized. "It's designed to integrate your academic learning with practical applications in real time. You'll be able to apply concepts from your morning classes to actual projects in our labs that same afternoon." Throughout the morning, Rayhan was introduced to so many people and shown so many innovations that his head was spinning with information. Yet beneath the momentary overwhelm was a growing excitement. This environment of creativity, problem-solving, and forward-thinking was exactly what he had dreamed of being part of when he first enrolled in engineering studies. By lunchtime, Rayhan had toured 6 different departments and received more business cards than he could count, each accompanied by genuine encouragement to reach out with questions. He was then introduced to Lucas Chen, his student mentor, who would accompany him to the university admissions office later that afternoon. Lucas was about Rayhan's age, with an easy smile and a relaxed demeanor that immediately put Rayhan at ease. "The executive tour is impressive, right?" Lucas said as they walked to the company cafeteria. "I almost passed out from information overload on my first day. Don't worry, it gets less intimidating once you're actually working here." Over lunch, Lucas shared his own journey, how he had been working as a night janitor at his community college to pay for classes when a Mercer Tech recruiter noticed his perfect scores in advanced mathematics and physics courses. "The scholarship changed everything for me," Lucas explained. "I went from cleaning classrooms to designing experimental computer chips in less than a year." What struck Rayhan most was how Lucas described the culture at Mercer Tech. "It's intense, but not cutthroat," Lucas told him. "People here compete with problems, not with each other, and the scholarship cohort is like a family. We support each other because we've all been in similar situations before coming here." As they ate, Lucas answered Rayhan's practical questions about balancing work and studies, navigating university bureaucracy with the scholarship office's help, and adjusting to the significant lifestyle change that came with the program. "The hardest part for me was accepting that I deserved to be here," Lucas admitted. "I kept waiting for someone to realize they'd made a mistake choosing me. But that's the thing about Mercer. He doesn't make mistakes about people. If he sees potential in you, it's because it's genuinely there." After lunch, Lucas accompanied Rayhan to the university admissions office, where Janet had arranged an appointment with the head of enrollment services. The process that would normally take weeks was expedited in a matter of hours. With Rayhan's previous academic records retrieved, his re-enrollment application processed, and his class schedule for the upcoming semester tentatively arranged to complement his internship hours at Mercer Tech, the admissions director, Dr. Williams, explained that the Mercer Tech scholarship program had a special relationship with the university. "We've seen remarkable success with Alexander's scholars," he said, reviewing Rayhan's previous academic record with evident approval. "The retention and graduation rates for Mercer Tech scholars are nearly perfect, and many go on to pursue advanced degrees." By late afternoon, Rayhan had a university ID card, access to the online student portal, and a preliminary class schedule that would allow him to resume his studies without losing any credits from his previous enrollment. The reality of returning to his education, a dream he had reluctantly set aside 3 years ago, was finally sinking in, bringing with it a profound sense of gratitude and responsibility. Lucas, who had patiently guided him through the university's administrative labyrinth, suggested they take a walk through the campus before heading back to Mercer Tech. "You should reacquaint yourself with the place," he said as they strolled past academic buildings and student gathering spaces. "It'll be your second home soon enough." The campus looked both familiar and new to Rayhan. The same brick buildings and tree-lined paths he remembered, but with subtle changes: new construction in what had been an empty lot, renovated study spaces in the library, upgraded technology centers. Or perhaps it was Rayhan himself who had changed, viewing his surroundings now through the lens of renewed purpose and opportunity. "The engineering building was completely renovated last year," Lucas explained as they approached a modern structure of glass and sustainable materials. The entire East Wing is now a joint Mercer Tech University research facility. That's where most of your advanced classes will be held, and it connects directly to the internship labs. Inside, Lucas showed Rayhan the collaborative workspaces, cutting-edge laboratories and quiet study areas available to engineering students. As a Mercer Tech scholar, you'll have 24/7 access to these facilities, Lucas explained. It was designed to blur the lines between academic learning and practical application. Exactly the integration Dr. Kapoor was telling you about earlier. Rayhan ran his hand along a sleek workstation, imagining himself studying there in just a few weeks. It's almost too much to take in, he admitted to Lucas. Yesterday I was just trying to make enough deliveries to cover my rent and help my parents. Today I'm touring corporate headquarters and registering for classes. Lucas nodded understandingly. The transition is intense. When it happened to me, I kept thinking I would wake up and find it was all a dream. He leaned against a desk, his expression becoming more serious. Can I give you some advice that I wish someone had given me? Of course, Rayhan replied. Don't let imposter syndrome hold you back, Lucas said firmly. You belong here. You earned this opportunity, not just by being kind to Sophia Mercer, but through years of hard work and perseverance before that moment. Your academic record shows it. Your character shows it. He gestured around the advanced facility. All of this, the scholarship, the internship, the resources, they're not gifts. They're investments in your potential, investments that Mercer Tech expects to see returns on. Rayhan considered this perspective thoughtfully. I hadn't thought of it that way. Most of us don't, at first, Lucas said with a smile. We feel indebted, which can be paralyzing. But the truth is, Mercer doesn't do charity. He does strategic investments in human capital. The company expects you to succeed, to contribute, to eventually pay it forward by mentoring others. That's how the ecosystem works. This framing helped ease some of the overwhelming gratitude Rayhan had been feeling, replacing it with a clearer sense of purpose and responsibility. He wasn't being handed something for nothing. He was being given an opportunity to fulfill his potential and contribute meaningfully to both the company and the broader world through his work. As they exited the engineering building, Lucas checked his watch. We should head back to Mercer Tech. Janet scheduled a final meeting for you with the Foundation's medical director about your father's case. The meeting with Dr. Patil, Mercer Tech Foundation's medical director, was arguably the most impactful part of Rayhan's extraordinary day. Dr. Patil reviewed the medical records Janet had somehow obtained from Rayhan's father's doctors, with proper authorization, she assured him, and explained how the Foundation's stroke rehabilitation program could benefit him. We've developed a therapy approach that combines conventional physical rehabilitation with neuroadaptive technology, Dr. Patil explained, showing Rayhan videos of patients using specialized equipment that responded to even the smallest intentional muscle movements, gradually helping rebuild neural pathways damaged by stroke. The results have been remarkable, particularly for patients who begin treatment within 5 years of their initial stroke, she continued. Based on your father's records, I believe he would be an excellent candidate for our program. Rayhan was moved beyond words at the prospect of his father regaining more mobility and independence. How does this work? He asked, forcing his voice to remain steady despite the emotion welling up inside him. Would he need to come to Westshore? Dr. Patil smiled reassuringly. We have satellite centers in several regions, including one about 30 minutes from Meadowbrook. We could arrange for your father to receive therapy there 3 times weekly. For more specialized assessments, we would occasionally bring him to our main medical center here in Westshore with transportation provided by the Foundation. She handed Rayhan a comprehensive information packet. All of this would be covered by the Foundation's program. I've already spoken with your father's current physician, who is enthusiastic about collaborating with our team. If your parents consent, we could begin the intake process next week." By the time Rayhan left Mercertech headquarters late that afternoon, his mind was swimming with information, opportunities, and possibilities that would have seemed impossible just 24 hours earlier. Janet walked him to the parking garage, where his new scooter waited, fully charged. "Mr. Mercer asked me to give you this," she said, handing him a small box as they said goodbye. He mentioned something about it being a tradition for new scholarship recipients. Rayhan opened the box after Janet had departed and found an elegant pen with the Mercertech logo subtly embedded in its design. A small card accompanied it, handwritten in what Rayhan assumed was Alexander Mercer's own script. "To write the next chapter of your story. Looking forward to seeing where it leads. AM." The gesture, simple yet meaningful, brought a lump to Rayhan's throat. He carefully placed the pen in his inner jacket pocket, close to his heart, before starting his scooter for the journey home. Rather than going directly to his apartment, Rayhan found himself riding to Central Park, specifically to the bench, where he had met Sophia the previous day. The park looked different in the golden light of late afternoon, families with children playing where business people had sat during lunch hours, the fountains catching sunlight instead of the morning's shadow. He sat on the same bench, trying to process everything that had happened since that fateful encounter. His life had been irrevocably changed by a single decision to share his lunch with a hungry child. Not because the universe had magically rewarded his kindness, as in some fairy tale, but because that act had created a human connection, one that had revealed his character and potential to someone with the resources to help him develop that potential further. As Rayhan sat reflecting, his phone buzzed with notifications from Speed Meal. The dinner rush was beginning, and drivers were needed. For a moment, he felt a reflexive anxiety, the ingrained response of someone whose livelihood depended on maximizing every earning opportunity. Then he remembered he no longer needed to chase every delivery just to survive. Still, Rayhan didn't simply dismiss the notification. Instead, he opened the app and properly submitted his request to reduce his hours, explaining that he would be returning to university but wanted to continue working part-time during the transition period. It was important to him to honor his commitment to the company that had provided his livelihood for 3 years, to give proper notice rather than simply disappearing as some drivers did when better opportunities arose. As he completed this task, Rayhan noticed an older man sitting on a nearby bench, dressed in a security guard uniform, looking exhausted as he unpacked a simple sandwich from a paper bag. The man's expression as he contemplated his meager meal reminded Rayhan powerfully of his own situation just days ago. The careful rationing of food, the calculations of how to stretch resources until the next payday. Without hesitation, Rayhan approached one of the park's food vendors and purchased 2 fresh meals and bottles of water. He walked over to the security guard, whose name tag read Harold, and politely offered him one of the meals. "Excuse me, sir, I thought you might enjoy something hot for dinner." "I'm Rayhan." Harold looked up in surprise, his weathered face showing initial suspicion that quickly melted into cautious gratitude. "That's mighty kind of you, young man, but I can't accept charity." Rayhan smiled, understanding the man's pride. "It's not charity, sir. Consider it paying forward a kindness that was shown to me recently. I'd be honored if you'd accept it." After a moment's hesitation, Harold nodded and accepted the meal. "Thank you, Rayhan. It's been a long day on my feet." "May I join you?" Rayhan asked, indicating the space on the bench. Harold moved his bag to make room, and as they ate together, Rayhan learned that the older man was working 2 jobs to help support his granddaughter's college education after his son-in-law had abandoned the family. Despite his exhaustion, Harold spoke with pride about his granddaughter's academic achievements and determination. "She's studying computer science," Harold said. "Smart as a whip, that girl. Going to change the world someday, I just know it." As their conversation continued, an idea began to form in Rayhan's mind. Mercer Tech had summer internship programs for undergraduate students in computer science. Perhaps there might be an opportunity there for Harold's granddaughter, not handed to her as a favor, but a chance to apply and be evaluated on her merits. A door that Rayhan might help open just a crack to give her the opportunity to push through it herself. "Mr. Harold, would your granddaughter be interested in learning about internship opportunities at technology companies?" Rayhan asked carefully, not wanting to overstep or make promises he couldn't keep. Harold's eyes brightened. "She's always talking about those big tech firms, but says they only hire from fancy universities, not community colleges like hers." "That's not entirely true," Rayhan replied, thinking of his own journey. "Some companies specifically look for talent in unexpected places. If she's as brilliant as you say, she might have more opportunities than she realizes." He took out his newly acquired business cards from Mercer Tech and carefully wrote his personal number on the back of one. "I have some connections at a company called Mercer Tech. I can't promise anything, but if she sends me her resume, I could pass it along to their university recruitment team." Harold's eyes widened as he examined the Mercer Tech business card. "You work for Mercer Tech? That's one of those billion-dollar companies my granddaughter talks about." "I'm just starting there," Rayhan explained modestly, "but I'd be happy to help your granddaughter explore possibilities. Sometimes all it takes is knowing the right person to pass along your information." The older man's weathered face broke into a grateful smile. "I don't know what to say, young man. Jasmine, that's my granddaughter. She works so hard, gets straight A's while working part-time at the campus library. She deserves a chance like that." "She sounds remarkable," Rayhan agreed. "Have her email me her resume and some information about her interests in computer science. I can't promise anything specific, but I'll make sure it gets to the right people." As they finished their meals, Harold shared more about his life. 30 years as a security guard at various locations around the city, raising 3 children after his wife passed away young, and now helping with his granddaughter after his daughter's difficult divorce. Despite the hardships he described, there was no bitterness in his voice, only quiet determination and pride in his family. Before they parted ways, Harold insisted on taking a selfie with Rayhan to show Jasmine the nice young man from Mercer Tech. As Rayhan watched the elderly security guard walk away with a new energy in his step, he felt a profound sense of rightness. The cycle was continuing. Kindness generating opportunity, opportunity enabling more kindness. The next 3 weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity as Rayhan prepared for the momentous transitions in his life. His first priority was visiting his parents in Meadowbrook, bringing them detailed information about the scholarship program and the medical foundation's offer to help with his father's rehabilitation. The reunion was emotional, his mother embracing him with tears of joy, while his father, seated in his wheelchair, beamed with pride. Rayhan spent 2 days with them, explaining everything that had happened and helping them understand the opportunities and resources now available to their family. His father was initially hesitant about accepting help from the Mercer Tech Foundation, his pride making him reluctant to become a charity case. It was only when Rayhan explained Dr. Patel's approach that patients in the program contributed valuable data to research that would help others recovering from strokes, that his father began to see his participation as giving rather than merely receiving. If my experience can help other stroke survivors, then it becomes meaningful work, not charity, his father concluded, his decision made. Rayhan also used the visit to help his parents financially, using part of his stipend to repair several issues in their modest home that had been neglected due to financial constraints: a leaking roof, an unreliable water heater, broken steps. On the back porch, he hired local workers for these repairs, conscious of contributing to the community's economy rather than just addressing his family's immediate needs. When he returned to Westshore City, Rayhan focused on organizing his transition. From full-time delivery driver to student and intern, true to his word, he continued working part-time for Speedmeal throughout those weeks, gradually reducing his hours as he prepared for the beginning of the semester. His manager at Speedmeal, initially dismayed at the prospect of losing one of his most reliable drivers, became surprisingly supportive after Rayhan explained his situation. "You're doing exactly what you should be doing, bettering yourself through education," the manager told him. "And you're handling it professionally, giving proper notice instead of just disappearing like most drivers do when something better comes along. I respect that." The manager even offered to keep Rayhan on the schedule for weekend shifts if he wanted to earn extra money during the semester, an arrangement that Rayhan gratefully accepted. While the scholarship stipend was generous, he wanted to maintain some independent income and continue building his savings. During these weeks of preparation, Rayhan received regular updates from Janet Bellamy about his impending start at Mercer Tech. His internship schedule was finalized, his workspace in the engineering department was being prepared, and his student ID had been linked to the company's security system to allow seamless movement between university and corporate facilities. He also heard from Dr. Patil that his father's intake assessment at the rehabilitation center had gone exceptionally well. "The specialists believe your father could regain up to 70% of his pre-stroke mobility with our program," she reported, her voice conveying genuine excitement. "His cognitive functions are completely intact, which is extremely favorable for neural pathway reconstruction." Amid all these developments, Rayhan didn't forget his promise to Harold. He had forwarded Jasmine's impressive resume to the university recruitment team at Mercer Tech, with a brief note explaining how he had met her grandfather and learned of her circumstances and abilities. To his delight, the recruitment coordinator responded that they would definitely reach out to Jasmine about their summer internship program, noting that they were particularly interested in talented students from community colleges and non-traditional backgrounds. A week before classes were to begin, Alexander Mercer invited Rayhan to dinner at his home again. This time, the invitation extended to several other scholarship recipients, including Lucas Chen and 4 other students at various stages in their academic and internship journeys with Mercer Tech. The dinner was less formal than Rayhan's previous visit, with Alexander and Sophia hosting the small group in a comfortable dining room rather than the grand formal space. The conversation flowed easily among the scholars, each sharing their backgrounds and aspirations, while Alexander listened attentively, occasionally asking insightful questions that demonstrated his genuine interest in their development. Sophia, seated beside Rayhan, whispered to him during a moment when others were engaged in conversation. "I didn't tell you this before, but you're the first scholarship student Dad has personally selected in almost 2 years. Usually the foundation committee handles everything." Rayhan looked surprised. "Why me?" Sophia's expression became thoughtful. "I think you reminded him of something important, that success isn't just about technology or business achievements. It's about the kind of person you choose to be when no one's watching." She glanced fondly at her father across the table. Dad needed that reminder. After dinner, while the other scholars were engaged in a tour of Alexander's in-home technology museum led by Sophia, Alexander asked Rayhan to join him in his study for a brief conversation. "How are you feeling about everything, Rayhan?" Alexander asked once they were seated in the comfortable office. "Is the transition progressing smoothly?" "It's been incredible," Rayhan answered honestly. "Sometimes I still can't believe how much has changed in just a few weeks." My father's already showing improvement with the new therapy program, and I'm excited to begin classes and my internship." Alexander nodded, pleased with this response. "The first semester will be challenging as you readjust to academic demands. While learning the ropes at Mercer Tech, don't hesitate to lean on the resources available to you, your mentor, the other scholars, the academic support services." "I won't," Rayhan promised. "I understand this is a significant investment in my future, and I take that responsibility seriously." A small smile played at the corners of Alexander's mouth. "Lucas has been mentoring you already, I see. He's the one who always emphasizes the investment perspective." His expression became more reflective. "He's not wrong, but there's more to it than that." Alexander rose and walked to the window, gazing out at the city lights just as he had during Rayhan's first visit. "Before you met Sophia in the park that day, she had been having a difficult time at school. Not academically. She excels in her studies, but socially." He turned back to face Rayhan. "Since her mother died, Sophia has struggled to connect with her peers. Many of them befriend her because of who I am, because of our wealth, or what they think they can gain through association with the Mercer name." A shadow of sadness crossed his features. "Sophia is perceptive enough to recognize this, and it's left her isolated and distrustful." Rayhan listened quietly, beginning to understand why his simple act of kindness had resonated so deeply. When she came home that day, talking about the delivery driver who shared his lunch without wanting anything in return, who treated her like a person rather than an opportunity or a charity case, it was the first time in months I'd seen her genuinely excited about a human connection. Alexander's voice carried a depth of emotion that hadn't been present in their previous interactions. "You gave my daughter something far more valuable than a meal, Rayhan. You gave her hope that genuine kindness still exists in the world. She's a remarkable young woman," Rayhan said sincerely. "I enjoyed our conversation that day. She has wisdom beyond her years." "She gets that from her mother," Alexander replied, softly. "Charlotte always saw people for who they truly were, not what they projected or pretended to be." He returned to his chair, his manner becoming more businesslike again. "I wanted you to understand that while your scholarship is indeed an investment in your potential, it began as something more personal. A father's gratitude for the kindness shown to his daughter." Rayhan nodded, touched by this revelation. "I'm honored by your trust in me, Mr. Mercer. I promise I won't waste this opportunity." "I know you won't," Alexander replied with certainty. "Now, shall we rejoin the others? I believe Sophia is about to demonstrate our prototype holographic display technology, which is always quite impressive." As they walked back toward the technology, "Museum," Alexander added casually. "By the way, Janet mentioned you referred a promising young woman named Jasmine Evans to our recruitment team. Her background and academic achievements are quite remarkable. Her grandfather works 2 jobs to help support her education," Rayhan explained. "I met him in the park recently. He reminded me of my own parents, willing to sacrifice everything to give the next generation better opportunities." Alexander nodded approvingly. "That's exactly the kind of talent we're looking for. Individuals with both ability and determination, who understand the value of opportunity because they've had to work for everything they've achieved." He gave Rayhan a knowing look. "You're already thinking like a Mercer Tech talent scout, and you haven't even officially started yet." "I just know what it's like to have potential but lack connections," Rayhan replied simply. "Sometimes all people need is for someone to open a door so they can walk through it themselves." "Well said," Alexander agreed as they rejoined the group, where Sophia was indeed demonstrating a remarkable holographic interface that allowed her to manipulate virtual objects in midair. "That's the essence of what our scholarship program aims to do: open doors for those who have the talent and determination to walk through them. 5 years later, the Mercer Tech headquarters gleamed in the morning sunlight as Rayhan Ahmed stepped out of his electric car and handed the keys to the valet. At 31, he carried himself with quiet confidence, his tailored suit a far cry from the worn delivery uniform he had once worn, yet his warm smile and humble demeanor remained unchanged. The security guards greeted him by name as he entered the soaring lobby, his executive access badge allowing him to bypass the visitor check-in that had once seemed so intimidating. "Good morning, Mr. Ahmed," called the receptionist. "The scholarship committee is assembled in conference room A. Ms. Mercer asked me to let you know she'll be joining shortly." Rayhan thanked her and made his way to the elevator, reflecting on how much had changed in 5 years. He had completed his engineering degree with honors, transitioned from intern to full-time engineer, and now served as Deputy Director of Sustainable Materials Development at Mercer Tech. His team was pioneering construction materials that actively removed carbon from the atmosphere, technology that was already being implemented in building projects around the world. But today wasn't about his professional achievements. Today was about continuing the cycle that had transformed his own life half a decade earlier. The conference room was filled with familiar faces: executives, foundation directors, and several former scholarship recipients who, like him, now served. On the selection committee, they were reviewing the final candidates for this year's cohort of Mercer Tech scholars, bright young individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds who had demonstrated exceptional potential. "Rayhan, perfect timing," called Dr. Kapoor, now his direct supervisor and mentor. "We're just about to discuss the engineering candidates." As Rayhan took his seat, the door opened again and Sophia Mercer entered. No longer the young girl he had met in the park, she was now a poised university student studying architectural engineering at Westshore University's Honors College. At 19, she had already published research on biomimetic design principles and interned with renowned architectural firms. Despite her academic success and family name, she remained grounded and deeply committed to the scholarship program her father had established. "Sorry I'm late," she apologized, taking a seat beside Rayhan. "My final project presentation ran long." "How did it go?" Rayhan asked as the committee organized their materials. Sophia grinned. "The review panel asked if I'd consider publishing it as a journal article. I'd say that's a good sign." "No surprise there," Rayhan replied with pride. Over the years, he'd become something of an older brother figure to Sophia, occasionally helping with her more challenging engineering coursework and offering guidance as she navigated her academic path. The committee began their discussion, reviewing each candidate's qualifications, circumstances, and potential. The final engineering position came down to 2 outstanding applicants: a young woman from rural Appalachia who had taught herself programming while working in her family's struggling hardware store, and a young man from the inner city who had developed innovative water filtration systems for his community after their municipal supply was contaminated. "Both candidates are exceptional," noted one of the executives. "Ms. Reynolds has higher test scores, but Mr. Washington's practical innovation experience is remarkable." "Why not both?" Sophia suggested suddenly. "My father always says that when faced with 2 exceptional candidates, the right answer is rarely to choose between them." The foundation director frowned slightly. "We only budgeted for 1 additional engineering scholarship this year. I'd like to personally fund Mr. Washington's scholarship," Sophia said firmly, "through my own foundation account." Rayhan wasn't surprised by Sophia's generosity. Since turning 18 and gaining access to her trust fund, she had established a personal charitable foundation focused on educational opportunities and environmental innovation, causes that reflected both her mother's values and her own evolving priorities. The meeting concluded with unanimous approval of both candidates, along with 12 others across various disciplines. As the committee members gathered their materials and prepared to leave, Alexander Mercer himself appeared in the doorway. "How did it go?" he asked, his hair now more grey than black, but his penetrating gaze unchanged. "Have we found our next generation of innovators?" 14 exceptional candidates, Dad, Sophia reported proudly, including 2 brilliant engineering prospects. Alexander nodded approvingly, then addressed the room. "Thank you all for your dedication to this program. Finding and nurturing talent from unexpected places isn't just good for these students, it's essential for the future of innovation." His eyes met Rayhan's briefly, a shared understanding passing between them. As the room cleared, Alexander approached Rayhan. "Do you have a moment? There's something I'd like to discuss." They walked together to Alexander's office, the same space, where Rayhan had first learned about the scholarship opportunity that had changed his life. The view from the windows was the same, but Rayhan now saw it differently. Not as an outsider looking in with awe, but as someone who had earned his place in this world while remaining connected to where he came from. "I've been following your team's work on the carbon sequestering concrete alternative," Alexander began, settling into his chair. "The early implementation results are exceeding even our most optimistic projections. The team has done exceptional work," Rayhan acknowledged, automatically deflecting personal praise to recognize the collective effort, a leadership quality that had accelerated his rise within the company. "Indeed they have, under your direction," Alexander agreed. "Which brings me to my proposition. The board has approved the establishment of a new division focused entirely on sustainable urban infrastructure solutions, combining several existing research tracks under one unified strategy." He leaned forward slightly. "I'd like you to consider leading it." Rayhan's expression revealed his surprise. "That would be a significant promotion. One you've earned," Alexander stated matter-of-factly. "Your technical innovations have been impressive, but it's your ability to inspire and lead teams while maintaining perspective on the human impact of our work that makes you the right person for this role." The offer was unexpected but not entirely surprising. Rayhan had consistently been given increasing responsibility as his capabilities had been demonstrated, and this new position aligned perfectly with his vision of creating technologies that addressed both environmental challenges and human needs. "I'd be honored," Rayhan replied sincerely. "Thank you for your confidence in me." Alexander nodded, satisfied. "Excellent. Janet will send over the details this afternoon." He rose, indicating their official business was concluded. But then his tone shifted to something more personal. "On another note, Sophia mentioned you're visiting your parents this weekend for your father's birthday." "Yes, they're having a small celebration. Thanks to the Foundation's rehabilitation program, my father has regained enough mobility to return to teaching part-time. It's been transformative for him." A genuine smile softened Alexander's features. "I'm glad to hear it. Please give them my regards." He hesitated briefly before adding, "If you wouldn't mind, I've had a small gift prepared for your father. Janet has it at her desk." This thoughtful gesture, extending beyond professional boundaries to recognize the personal milestone in Rayhan's family, perfectly exemplified why Rayhan had remained loyal to Mercertech, despite receiving numerous recruitment offers from competing companies over the years. The culture of genuine care that Alexander had cultivated, beginning with his own example, permeated the organization. As Rayhan left Alexander's office, he found Sophia waiting in the reception area, engaged in animated conversation with Janet. "There you are," Sophia exclaimed. "Did Dad tell you about the new division? I've been bursting to mention it for weeks, but he swore me to secrecy." "He just did," Rayhan confirmed with a smile. "It's an exciting opportunity." It's more than that, Sophia insisted. It's the perfect role for you. Combining technological innovation with social impact has always been your sweet spot. Janet handed Rayhan an elegantly wrapped package. For your father, she explained. Mr. Mercer selected it personally. Thanking her, Rayhan checked his watch. I should get going. I have a video call with the Singapore implementation team in 20 minutes. Before you disappear into meetings for the rest of the day, Sophia said, don't forget we're still on for dinner tomorrow night. Jasmine is bringing her fiancé, and I want you to meet him before the engagement party next month. Rayhan smiled. At the mention of Jasmine Evans, Harold's granddaughter, who had indeed secured that first summer internship at Mercer Tech years ago, and had subsequently risen to become one of their most promising young software architects. The connection he had made that day in the park with her grandfather had blossomed into a meaningful friendship, with Jasmine now part of their extended social circle. I wouldn't miss it, he assured Sophia. 7 o'clock at Emilio's, right? As Rayhan walked back toward his department, he passed the wall of photographs in the main corridor, a display showcasing each year's cohort of scholarship recipients. He paused briefly at his own cohort's picture, remembering that nervous young man in his first proper suit, standing awkwardly among his fellow scholars, unable to fully believe he belonged there. 5 years later, that sense of disbelief had been replaced by purpose and belonging. The cycle that began with a simple shared lunch continued to expand outward, touching more lives with each passing year. From delivery driver to division director, from struggling student to mentor and leader, his journey served as living proof of Alexander Mercer's philosophy that talent existed everywhere, needing only opportunity to flourish. That evening, as Rayhan drove his electric car through familiar streets toward his comfortable condominium, he made an impulsive decision to take a detour. Following memories rather than his navigation system, he found himself pulling into the parking lot of his old apartment building, the place he had called home during his struggling days as a delivery driver. The building looked much the same, perhaps with a fresh coat of paint and new landscaping, but essentially unchanged. Rayhan sat in his car for a moment, contemplating the distance he had traveled from the young man who had once counted coins to pay the rent on a tiny studio apartment. On impulse, he stepped out of his car and walked toward the building, nodding politely to residents coming and going. Near the entrance, he noticed a young woman in a speed meal delivery uniform, struggling to balance several food bags while trying to unlock her bicycle. Let me help you with that, Rayhan offered, stepping forward to steady the bags before they could topple. Thanks, the woman said gratefully, securing her delivery bag to the bicycle rack. These apartment complex deliveries are always tricky. Too many bags, too many locks. Rayhan smiled in understanding. I used to deliver for Speed Meal myself. About 5 years ago, I remember the challenges well. The woman, her name tag read Maya, looked at him with surprise, taking in his tailored suit and polished appearance. Really? You worked for Speed Meal? For 3 years, Rayhan confirmed. It got me through some tough times. Maya relaxed slightly, her initial wariness giving way to curiosity. What do you do now, if you don't mind me asking? I'm an engineer at Mercer Tech, Rayhan replied, deliberately omitting his director title. I was able to go back to school and finish my degree. Mercer Tech? Maya's eyes widened. I'm studying environmental science at Westshore Community College. We just had a guest lecture from someone at Mercer Tech about their sustainable materials division. That's my department. Actually, Rayhan said with a smile. Small world. As Maya secured the last of her deliveries, Rayhan noticed the textbook peeking out of her backpack, Advanced Environmental Systems Analysis. That's a graduate-level course, he observed. Maya nodded, a hint of pride breaking through her tired expression. I'm on an accelerated track Trying to, anyway. It's challenging balancing full-time deliveries with studies, but I'm making it work. Something about her determined demeanor reminded Rayhan powerfully of himself 5 years earlier. The exhaustion, the ambition, the refusal to let circumstances dictate her potential. Before he could second-guess himself, he reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card. Maya, Mercer Tech has a scholarship program for promising students in STEM fields, especially those facing financial challenges. The next application cycle opens in 3 weeks. He handed her his card. Email me your resume and transcript. I can't make any promises, but I'd be happy to provide more information about the program. Maya stared at the card, her expression cycling through surprise, suspicion, and cautious hope. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. Rayhan smiled. 5 years ago, I was exactly where you are, delivering food to make ends meet while trying to pursue an education. Someone gave me an opportunity that changed everything. Sometimes all it takes is one person opening a door. The next afternoon, Rayhan arrived at his parents' modest home in Meadowbrook for his father's birthday celebration. The small house was filled with the familiar aroma of his mother's cooking and the warm buzz of conversation from family friends and former colleagues who had come to celebrate. His father, once confined to a wheelchair, now used only a cane, making his way around the living room with slow but steady steps, a testament to the specialized therapy program he had received. Through the Mercer Tech Foundation, when he spotted Rayhan, his face lit up with joy. "My son," he called, extending his arms for an embrace. After the initial greetings and catching up with relatives, Rayhan presented his father with 2 gifts, a beautiful calligraphy set he had, selected himself, and the mysterious package from Alexander Mercer. His father opened Alexander's gift first, revealing an antique brass telescope with an accompanying letter. As he read it silently, tears welled in his eyes. He handed the letter to Rayhan, who read, "Dear Professor Ahmed, though we have never met, I feel I know you through your son. The values of integrity, generosity, and perseverance that Rayhan demonstrates daily are a testament to your guidance. This telescope once belonged to my own mentor, who helped me see beyond my immediate circumstances to the broader horizons of possibility. It seems fitting that it should now belong to a teacher who has clearly done the same for the next generation. Happy birthday, and thank you for raising a son who continues to inspire those around him, myself included. With respect and gratitude, Alexander Mercer." The celebration continued into the evening, with Rayhan's father proudly showing off the telescope to his guests. During a quiet moment, Rayhan stepped outside onto the back porch, gazing up at the stars becoming visible in the darkening sky. His mother joined him, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders against the evening chill. "You're looking thoughtful, Beta," she observed. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is wonderful, Ami," Rayhan assured her. "I was just thinking about how much has changed in 5 years. His mother nodded, following his gaze to the stars. "Your father uses a saying with his students that kindness is like a stone thrown into still water. The ripples move outward, touching shores far beyond what the thrower can see." She placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Your act of kindness that day in the park created ripples that changed not only your life, but ours. And now you're creating new ripples that will change other lives. I met a student yesterday," Rayhan told her, "a delivery driver working her way through environmental science courses. Seeing her reminded me so much of myself 5 years ago." His mother smiled knowingly. "And you've already found a way to help her, haven't you?" Rayhan nodded. "I gave her information about the scholarship program. She emailed me her resume this morning. She's brilliant, Ami, working on research about water conservation systems for urban agriculture while delivering food full-time to support herself." The cycle continues, his mother said softly. This is how the world improves, one act of kindness, one opportunity at a time. From inside the house came the sound of laughter and his father's voice calling for them to rejoin the party. As Rayhan turned to go inside, his phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Maya, thanking him for his encouragement and sharing more details about her research projects. Rayhan smiled, tucking the phone away and rejoining the celebration, carried forward by the knowledge that the ripples would continue outward, touching lives he might never see, creating changes he could not yet imagine, all from a simple lunch shared with a hungry child on a park bench years ago. The universe had a remarkable way of bringing things full circle, he reflected, as he watched his father demonstrate the telescope to an enraptured young cousin, not through magical thinking or cosmic rewards, but through the very human capacity to recognize ourselves in others, to extend a hand when it's needed most, and to remember, no matter how far we rise, the ground from which we started.